Thank you. We'll also have a Q&A session after each of the speakers' presentations. So I would kindly request all of you to either drop your questions in the chat box or raise your hand and we would unmute you and you can ask your question. Before any further delay, we'll move on to our first presentation by Dr. Jagannathan. Over to you, Dr. Jagannathan.
Thanks, Sakina, for the lovely introduction, and good afternoon, everyone. It's a pleasure to talk about ESG, a topic that's more so widely debated and discussed. And Sakina, if you could just pass on the right, okay, I'll do that. Yeah, given the topic and the time, I would make it a very high level or broad presentation on what exactly ESG is and how it is taking shape in the current scenario and what are the challenges and barriers. So to begin with, it's to have a look at the background. As Sakina was pointing out, ESG has moved from a humble corporate responsibility or corporate social responsibility, where you used to have more of a philanthropic efforts and then a bit of a recycling attempt or a beach cleanup or whatever, which were nice to have, to something more comprehensive, to something more quantitative as well. So ESG is the earlier CSR reports were something that were considered nice to have. But moving on, the ESG is not something that is nice to have, but slowly it's becoming something must have. And it's not that the companies want to publish reports as they used to do with the CSR and the corporate responsibility report, but it is the stakeholders who are demanding it. So to that extent, ESG has become more vital and more credible, and a lot of decisions or strategic decisions are going to be based out of that report. Moving to what exactly is driving ESG. Now, we have to, at this point of time, we have to bring the relevance to climate change. In summary, the climate is changing because of man-made emissions. Global emissions are on the rise, and global emissions cause increase in temperature. That temperature is going to become unsustainable because it's going to lead to several devastating effects. And the climate change is going to have lead to flooding, hurricane, or unseasonal weathers, acid rains, or bleaching of corals, impacting agriculture, food chain, everything. So there is a consensus that in order to avoid climate change becoming very nasty, we have to control global warming. So by global warming, we have to reduce global warming by reducing the emissions. So a climate agreement or a Paris climate deal was formed, or it's a part of the Paris deal, where it was decided that in order to retain the sanctity of the earth, in order to make it continue to livable, we need to reduce emissions to net zero by 2050 in order to avoid temperature rise beyond 2 degrees by 2100. So that net zero agreement or commitment is a starting point of everything that we're going to discuss now. When there is a net zero commitment, countries are committing that they are going to go net zero, they're going to stop their sectoral emissions by 2050, 2060, 2070. Europe, EU has 2050, UK has 2050, China has 2060, India has 2070. So different nations are committing to net zero. When nations commit to net zero, all the other sectors follow the line. So commitment from nation is just a statement. So we have to have all the sectors, the power sector, the transportation sector, the industries, buildings, retail, shipping, aviation, they all have to come to zero. And when they all have to commit zero, when they commit zero, they have to follow it up with an action plan. How exactly they're going to bring it to zero. That is the net zero climate action plan. Once they have the action plan, they have to articulate that through reports that forms the basis of ESG reports. So there is a heavy focus of all the businesses to create to not only commit net zero, but articulate them through a proper ESG report. And at the same time, we are seeing a lot of confluence of science and finance. So net zero requires investment. That investment should be responsible investment. So not only are the sectors trying to decarbonize their core activity of buildings or power or transportation, it's almost also the finance industry, comprising investment managers, banks, financial institutions. They are decarbonizing their portfolio emissions. So, in other words, whatever they're investing has to be responsible. So, a bank would rather invest in a company that is focusing on clean energy instead of investing in a company that continues to generate that continues to work on fossil fuels. So the former is responsible investment, while the latter is not considered responsible investment. So ESG is not specific to a specific to a sector, but it is taking an overarching role, and it includes all sectors that form a part of the economy. And in terms of trends, uh, uh, different nations have different levels of maturity. And based on the current scenario, you have ESG is pretty much becoming a mainstream in EU, US, and certain parts of Asia. For example, Singapore or Japan or Korea. As far as the MENA region is concerned, it is still at the early stages. A recent report found that only 6% of the UAE listed firms they have gone ahead with the sustainability reporting or standalone sustainability reporting. When I say standalone, it is not integrated with the financial reporting; it is non-financial reporting. And even that is limited to few finance sectors such as banks. And there have been hardly any sector, any firm from the real estate or the insurance that have gone ahead. Of course, there are few exceptions. They have gone ahead with ESG reporting, but this trend is likely to be reversed or over a period of time with increasing maturity. More and more firms are coming forward to. For example, I myself I could see that there are several real estate companies working towards proper ESG reporting. And in terms of mandates, DFM and ADX, they do have a mandate for listed firms, but it is not a comprehensive framework. It's limited to a sort of a checklist or a format which the listed companies have to fulfill or clarify to meet the requirements of the regulator. And moving in future, there's also going to be a great demand for investors or investment community to decarbonize their portfolios, and it will be the businesses are going to rely on these ESG reports not only to articulate the climate ambition but also to seek funding for their projects. When we have the ESG reporting, there are different reports that are available, which are called frameworks or standards. You should have a broad level understanding of various frameworks or reporting standards, and decide what exactly is applicable to you based on your exposure to stakeholders. If it is if the first one is a GRI report, which is a global reporting initiative that is the most widely used standard, where it appeals to all the stakeholders. It is not it has got three sections, which are economic, social, and environmental, and they have that is that connects all the stakeholders like NGOs, environmental groups, and then the authorities, vendors. So this is a very comprehensive one. There are two options within that, which is core option and the comprehensive option, but this is the most widely used framework. Whereas the next framework, which is SASP, that is more of a sector-based standard. So you have specific sections within SASP for different sectors, such as manufacturing sector, real estate sector. So any sector that wants to articulate the climate action would use this SASP because it's more simplified, more structured, more focused, sector specific, and it has got a better way of representing the position. A TCFT is a standard which is basically used by financial institutions, and it is recommended for certain high risk non financial sectors. It's a task force on climate related financial disclosures. This standard asks company to explain how they see climate change as impactful to their operations and what sort of an action they are taking in order to mitigate them. So it's basically divided into four topics. At the broad level, governance, strategy, risk management, and metrics and targets. So it is on the premise that a climate risk to an entity is a part of becomes a financial risk. If it's allowed to become a financial risk, it will destabilize the financial system. The Financial Stability Board (FSB) conceptualized this rating to help companies understand the climate risk and through a proper governance have strategies in place to manage those risks and in the process establish key metrics and targets. It's as simple as that. There are other standards as well. United Nations Sustainable Development Goals, which is again we all know about 17 goals. So some companies try to create a report that are aligned to SDGs. One SDG calls for climate action, life on water. Then there's access to clean power. So depending on their orientation, these companies create those reports aligned that are related to SDGs. Then there's a CDP, which was earlier called Carbon Disclosure Project. Then the GRESP, which is a standard purely for real estate. So there are different standards out there. We should make sure that we don't get confused by those, but we have to have an understanding of that to check what will be the right for our own organization. Now, this is something which you have to understand. It will take you to the trend of what's happening in the ESG. This is a template which we generally call it as alphabet soup, or it's a complex term that's used. But basically, what you would like to see through this report is through this slide is the fact that on the left-hand side you have the GRI, SASB, CDSB, TCFT that I talked about in the previous slide. They are the rating. They are the standards. Now, once you create a report and put it in the domain, you have to understand that there are certain organizations who are doing the data mining, such as Refinitiv or Bloomberg. They pick up those data from various companies and create analytics out of those data and publish those analytical values for the they actually use it and sell it for certain other companies. Companies such as Morgan Stanley, MSCI, and Dow Jones, they use the values that are given by Refinitiv and Bloomberg and other companies to create ESG ratings. So a company A would be putting the ESG report, and data would be mined by Refinitiv or Bloomberg, and that the mined data would be used by MSCI Dow Jones to give it a rating, a particular rating. And when investors score these values to find the rating and accordingly take a call to invest or not invest. So ESG is no longer something that is within the confines, it is going global. And there are important decisions made out of this, out of your report, uh, important investment decisions. So you should be mindful of that. In terms of terms of barriers, ESG is uh, not properly, or it is still it is yet to reach the level of maturity. It is a journey, and we cannot say anyone is mature, but a lot of things are happening in too short a time that is likely to confuse the market. And when it comes to ESG, people think there's a perception that ESG is more reporting rather than the actual work. So very often people say, "Give me a report," but it's not just a reporting exercise, but a serious output of committed actions. So as long as you think it is a report, it will not have the required impact. Organization have to start understand and commit to certain sustainability actions, and then the outcome of that is what is becomes a ESG report. And ESG report, ESG within an organization, which is environmental, social, governance actions. Uh, split it. It might be energy conservation, water conservation, waste management, percentage of women in the workforce, training, capacity building, or the board or women in the board of directors, linking compensation to the sustainability achievements. All those parameters require the top involvement of the board or the top management. Anyone who attempts to make a ESG report without the commitment of the top management is as good as a complete waste, because ESG articulates the views of the company and how responsible it is towards climate change or to addressing climate change. So it has to be the company, the whole company has to believe in it, and the top management should drive down the responsibility or the philosophy to all the stakeholders so that each and everyone is an active part of the ESG process in their own level. It cannot be, it should be top down only. So involvement of the top management is a must, and there is no second opinion on that at all. And you have to again, once again, understand that ESG reporting is out of the actions that you take and the aspirations that you have, not just few linking to few SDGs here, there, and that does not become ESG report. So you have to be mindful of that. And data is what is eventually very important. You please bear in mind that the investors or stakeholders are going to constantly look at data. What are your emissions? How is it varying? Are you seriously achieving what you committed? So, incredible report with loose data and unthought out commitments is going to have a problem. So it will reduce the credibility of the organization. So, to take this journey, how exactly shall we get ourselves into the ESG journey? Um, ESG, ESG is again a journey. It is not a destination. So there's nothing like you have to start big. You can be humble and then slowly build it on. There's nothing like perfect ESG. ESG is how your organization understands the climate change. What are you doing in order to protect it in terms of things that are under your control? You can do energy saving, you can do water saving, you can do waste management, you can use less fuel. That's on the energy side. Try to do that, set a strategy, calculate the measurement, think of what you could do to reduce it, and then put out a plan. Same thing on the social aspect. Same thing on the governance aspect. So once you do that, so the year one you might not have anything. So and there's nothing wrong in saying that, oh, we are going to establish a climate action plan. We are going to strengthen the governance. We are going to do that. That's fine, as long as you put it and then achieve it. Uh, and once you commit to something, make sure that it is completely disseminated to the team. As I said, each and every member should be involved in the decision making process and in the operation of your and in the operation sustainability operations as well. um, once you understand your own domain, try to look into the frameworks available. So you can create a report with a light alignment to the various frameworks. It's not necessary that you have to completely follow GRI, completely follow SASB or whatever. You can still have your own report in a way that suits your operations, and then start achieving follow through it with achievements or trying to convert the commitments to actions. um, Basically, when ESG is again, since I said it is evolving, you need to have your fingers on the pulse of what's happening. Try to attend, try to participate in various knowledge building exercises, be it webinars or conferences. Also participate in awards, which will bring in multiple perspectives to you. And at the end of the day, ESG is being ethical. So you understand, you be true to yourself, calculate your where exactly you are in the sustainability domain in terms of emissions. Try to reduce it in a reasonable manner, and get onto a framework and report them and follow through them with the reports, with continued reports. So that's the way you establish your credibility and then be a part of the ESG journey. So I think these are the broad level perspectives I wanted to reach out, give it to you. And thanks, Sakina. I'm through with that.
Thank you so much, Dr. Jagan, for the insightful presentation. We'll move on to the second presentation, which would be hosted by Dr. Abhishek. Over to you, Dr. Abhishek.
Thank you. Thank you. First of all, I would like to congratulate Mr. Jagan for such a wonderful presentation. I think he has
Thank you.
laid down a very strong foundation for us. Yeah. So strong foundation in terms of the topic which I would be picking up, and in fact, it's just an extension of what Mr. Jagan has mentioned today. So my topic today is on the regulatory landscape, especially focusing on the GCC, as Mr. Jagan was mentioning about the global regulations from SASB to GRI to TCFD and other regulatory requirements that can help you, start your journey of the ESG implementation within your organization. And it's more important to understand the substance rather than the form which is there. And that's what I will build upon his excellent presentation on. So my area of coverage is regulatory landscapes, especially focusing on GCC. The presentation I have quickly divided into six key parts to take you through the ESG concept, the evolution, the stance, especially from the government perspective. We have outlined some of the points my earlier speaker has also covered, but we'll quickly make sure that all the points are reiterated in the form which is required from the government perspective, and the challenges which the companies may have today or in the coming future, and how they need to plan it accordingly. We will also love to highlight some success story to showcase you that there is also already a lot of initiative which has happened, especially in the GCC environment and UAE in particular, and some of the regulatory push which has been happening in terms of the ESG side, be it from the listed entity perspective, as my colleague mentioned, and also from other governmental level initiatives and announcements with regards to net zero progress update. So ESG, I think in a very simple term, my colleague had also explained, I'll not take much of the time, but it is basically in a very simple term to put those, I would say, objectives in place today, which will have a long-term sustainable growth for your organization, for the society at large, and for the country as a whole. So that's where environmental, social governance, the key parameters which are there. Currently, a lot of people are doing some of the parts. So if you are part of a listed entity, governance is something which is already there. If you are part of a private organization, professionally driven organization, governance is already there. If you are an organization which is into manufacturing and all, you are already complying with some of the environmental laws put in by the governments which are there. So it's not that this is something which is coming unique as of today, but yes, the package, the way it has been packaged now, from the social, from the governance, as well as the environment. And I would add one more E to it is economic, is very important from the overall perspective on how we take this forward in the right direction for not only our current generation and also future generation, to create that long-term sustainable growth. So ESG's perspective is nothing but to do that particular dollar investment which leads to long-term sustainability rather than short-term achievements of the goals. There are many parameters and issues which covers from environmental. There are specific points, environmental management, and I will try to link these points with the regulatory landscape, how it is happening in the GCC, so that you get a more better perspective. Energy management. Now we all know energy management is something which is evolving not only in the region but globally also, especially with the introduction of more cleaner energies. GHG emission is another thing which is also taking up a course. Similarly to that, if you look at social, one of the main thing which you are seeing is diversity and inclusion, especially in this part of the world. Workforce training, the safety, and the customer data protection is also something which has become a very important perspective of the misutilization of the data which was happening. Now all the countries in the GCC have come out with data protection law for the customer, for the employees, to ensure that the privacy is always maintained. The personal data protection laws are in place, and stricter actions are put in place to ensure full compliance. Similarly, on the governance side, you see a lot of initiatives taken, and especially given the interest rate going higher, the cheaper form of capital would be, for especially for the foreseeable future, would be equity markets. And you would see a lot of entities which are currently private or currently part of a family house will be getting into the listing also. And now, as one of the major criteria of listing, it includes the ESG commitment of the organization, how compliant they currently are, and how they plan to achieve their ESG goals and targets as a commitment as an organization. Again, there are certain points which are important to be noted. Corporate reputation also, if you are a ESG compliant organization, corporate reputation is something which also enhances the risk, gets reduced, the opportunity in terms of getting more investors are more. And globally, if you see, all the investment fund houses have also committed their cause to ESG investing to make sure more sustainable growth is there. And similarly, the maturity level across the markets have been increasing with regards to companies' commitment, and people are now today aware about this concept. Yes, it is not implemented in full substance, but yes, there are certain cases which we'll discuss today quickly. In terms of the recent development, I think I'll take you through. There has been a lot of development since 2016 when this word was coined. And how the sustainable goals of the UN were coined along with it. But the major changes you would have seen from 2019, where ADX, DFM, especially in UAE, came out with the requirement of ESG disclosure, and now they have entered this year into sustainability reporting itself, which is an integrated framework they're expecting. So many sustainability report is being focused. Then, if you look at June 2020, Bahrain Borsa also came out with this. In Bahrain, also we are currently seeing a lot of organization which have either have created awareness within their senior management or board, or have actually gone into the reporting side. Next year is what they are anticipating, the compliance of ESG reporting for all listed. Yes, the initiative has been taken by a lot of listed entities, but in some form or the other, without direct compliances, we see that we all are part of this ESG framework, and we are complying with certain provision. It's just that how we capture those data, how we monitor, and how we set the goals for making sure that those enhancements are done. October 21, again, Saudi also came, and September 21 is where Borsa Kuwait also came into the picture. But the first and the most important thing is that in October 21, I think the UAE became the first country in the Gulf to commit for net zero carbon emission by 2050. And that's a big statement. That's a leadership statement that helps the country where it is moving. The objective and the goal has been set, and now the specific circulars or regulations are coming out in the market, and one of them is the circular economy regulation, which helps reduce the carbon emission, reduce the wastage, and enhances the ESG perspective as a whole. There has been a very strong stance by all the governments and the commitment towards ESG. And obviously, this can be demonstrated through all the listed entity, be it from listed stock exchanges, have committed themselves to, take this as a cause and make sure that the organization which is supervised by them are currently, following some form of ESG, and at least there is a plan on commitment in terms of implementation. There is a Vision 2021 in UAE, which was launched in 2010, provides sustainable environmental and infrastructure and sets national targets. Now, this may be involving clean energy, water consumption and preservations, as well as reduction of the carbon emission. And now going forward, these KPIs are measurable, and the government, even if you look at, I mean, a lot of people are from UAE, you would have seen that our DIVA bill also, if you check, there are very clear mention that what is our consumption, how we fare compared to similar houses in the region, and these kind of analytics helps us that how much we are directly contributing to this carbon footprint, and how we can help safeguard the environment by conserving energy. In terms of the government commitment, I think we'll start with UAE. The commitment of net zero is by 2050. That is something which is the first state which has done. They have committed also that they would be investing in renewable energies for up to around $16.8 billion. They will also have committed a soft loan for cleaner energy projects up to $400 million. So those are substantial dollar commitment which has already been done, and also statement with regards to how we plan to do the net zero. Saudi, on the other hand, has taken 10 years, as my earlier Mr. Jagannath was mentioning. Saudi has committed for 2060, and the company is focusing heavily on how to use technology to leverage the carbon capture and clean hydrogen, which will help them export more oil and gas in terms of cleaner energies itself. There is a net zero, a regulation approach which has come, carbon circular economy, and that is something which helps and advocates reduction, reuse, and recycle, or remove the the overall perspective in terms of how to safeguard the environment. Qatar, on the other hand, has also committed net zero by 2050, and although they aim to expand LNG production to 127 million tons, but the most important thing is, the gas production can help combat the climate change globally, and that is why the focus has been by Qatar to expose or focus more on that part. Moving ahead, in terms of Bahrain, again, Bahrain has committed 2060. They have also come out with circular economy. Kuwait has not documented any commitment as of now, but the country has pledged to reduce the GHG gas emissions by 7.4% by 2035. So there are a lot of commitments which has happened. And again, Oman recently, Muscat Stock Exchange opened a separate ESG department, very few months back only, and their target also they have set by 2050. Yes, my colleague also mentioned countries like India have mentioned certain targets which are in 2070, and yes, that those are the things which has to be looked into. But from GCC perspective, what we see today, the challenges are lack of standardization. So we expect that the regulators or the governing bodies can come out with certain GST standards which are applicable across GCC region. Currently, if you look at, yes, there has been a push on ESG front by the government, but the standards like GRI or SASB or integrated framework reporting, currently those things are not clear, and it has been left to the organization only to start doing the reporting side, start monitoring it rather than putting it on which standard. And majority of the companies in this part of the world have adopted the most well adaptable standards, which is GRI standards, very clear, concise, easy to measure, and that's where they have done. And obviously, gradually, once they are able to integrate it with their financials and not standalone, then they would be going into a higher form of standards, including sustainability standards or carbon footprints alike. The region specific risk will always remain. Again, the region has been focusing on oil exports, and that's where the traditional revenue has been for a lot of economies, and diversification is one part where they need to focus on. And the overall approach to ESG, be it from the internal regulator side, be it from the internal team side of a company, is also very important and should be connected with the strategic plan. We are seeing a lot of strategic plan covering this part now going forward, but obviously a lot of effort needs to be done as part of that. So going forward, we feel that ESG and the team, what the company should do is level setting, materiality assessment. Again, each organization is different, and they each organization perspective and the material parameter that needs to be assessed from the ESG perspective will vary. So please do that. Do strengthen the strategy, risk, and governance as part of the overall ESG framework. I think a lot of organization, if they streamline their governance side to start with and focus more on the social, that can be a good initiative, as well as the environmental. If you are into manufacturing and non-financial services, then obviously there is a lot of scope for you. Currently, there are certain regulations which are there, which can be adopted, and circular economy is one of them. And reporting and assurance, obviously, all the regulators have started for the reporting. So some of the success stories, I think, which we would like to discuss here. So if you look at Daikin, a leading manufacturer based out of UAE of air conditioning and heating, has also pledged as net zero by 2050, a target which the country has also set for themselves. Now, how the country would become net zero is only if the participants within the country who are contributing directly or indirectly to the carbon emissions has to focus and reduce those carbon footprint and give the statements which helps them achieve those targets. So that's something which is one case study which is there. On the other hand, on Saudi Arabia, Saudi Electricity Company has an energy mix of 99% fossil fuels, and they have pledged to generate 50% of its energy from renewable sources, which is also by 2030. So that also helps the cause of where Saudi Arabia wants to be going forward. Similarly, if you look at Qatar has also come out and unveiled its energy plan, which and how they plan to, overall over ramp the entire process of the carbon footprint and reduce it by 2035. So that is another thing which is also, the right initiative going forward. Bahrain, if you look at again, aligned Alba is a manufacturing setup, Aluminium Bahrain, and has also publicly stated and disclosed that by 2060 they would be putting the net zero emission as part of that. Kuwait again, Shell, one of the largest global company, has committed net zero emission energy business by 2050, and Oman PDO, again one of the largest organization, has committed that carbon neutral energy producers by themselves they will become by 2050. So there's a lot of initiative you can see which is there. And to summarize, and rather not taking much of your time, I mean, to summarize, the activity in GCC on ESG is picking up. It's just the nation stage. The regulators in the region are relying on global standards. It is left to the company, the current based on materiality analysis, they can start their reporting part. But the most important thing the companies need to do is to relook at their strategy, to understand where they want to be in 5 years on ESG footprint and develop their strategies accordingly to make sure that they fully comply with their internal guidance and also is market ready, because all the future generation, including the service we want to give to the young generation, they're very much aware. They're, I would say, ESG awakened, and they are very much aware what products they want. They really want something which is sustainable. So again, if you want to serve the future generation, you need to change the model in such a way which does not impact your efficiency production, but at the same time also helps you serve the key market which you are in. With that note, I would like to conclude my presentation and would like to thank once again CRIF partners in UAE and other markets for taking such initiatives and creating the awareness which is required as part of ESG framework. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Abhishek, for the wonderful presentation. In the interest of time, we'll move on to the final part of the presentation, which will be hosted by Francesco Portioli. Over to you, Francesco. Thank you.
Thanks, Sakina. And again, good afternoon, everybody. I'm glad to be here today and to present Synesgy. But first of all, let me thank the organizer and also the colleagues, Dr. Jagannathan and Dr. Abhishek, for the very inspiring speeches. And to be honest, I have also taken some notes from their presentation. So a set of key words like when it comes to sustainability, setting and achieving targets, taking ownership, the materiality assessment, brainstorming with all the stakeholders, be prepared for the change, and a key message from Dr. Jagannathan's speech: ESG is a journey. I would like to start from here, from this concept, in order to present you Synesgy, and particularly to, first of all, deep dive a little bit more on the CRIF journey towards sustainability. We study since 2017-2018, thanks to the participation in several European projects, Horizon 2020 project funded by European Commission, where we have been involved in certain analysis linking correlation between energy consumption, and credit risk. So more focusing on the E side, the environmental one. In 2020, we realized that there was a lack of existing information, especially in the Italian market, linked to sustainability and ESG. And that's why, thanks to our presence with our CRIF company in the business info side and market, we launched our first digital platform, CRIF ESG. But again, considering or taking into account our international presence with different CRIF offices at worldwide level, we launched in 2022 Synesgy, a global digital platform. Let me deep dive a little bit more on this. Synesgy, has already been introduced by Sakina, is a global digital platform that supports companies, financial institutions in the process of gathering, collecting, and managing ESG information. So as of today, we have localized the solution in 4 different continents. We currently cover more than 40 countries, and we have different several languages available in the system. In those countries where we do not have a local presence with the CRIF office, we have a dedicated partnership in place that allow us also to cover such countries. What is the key problem here? During the previous presentations, we mentioned concepts like regulatory landscape, regulatory framework linking to sustainability. We mentioned existing international and national, again, frameworks and regulations, directive. All of this is strictly linked to the fact that nowadays all the market actors should act in order to manage ESG information and data. And there is no doubt linked to the fact that when companies or financial institutions are able or can prove that they are integrating in their internal practices ESG data analytics, they can see remarkable results. So looking more at the company level, the possibility of having a tool, a technological tool able to collect and manage such an information can have remarkable, again, impacts. First of all, in assessing and monitoring their own ESG performance. Secondly, identify an area of improvement and action to be undertaken. And lastly, positioning with respect to the industry peers. So sector positioning, basically. When it comes to the supply chain, for example, looking more at the corporate market, such a tool allows to assess and monitoring the ESG performance of the supply chain. While if you look at the benefit of using instruments like Synesgy in order to manage ESG information, they allow us to act in regard of the supply chain, again, acting on the operational side, reputational risks, so linking to the concept of reduction of costs, increasing internal efficiencies, creating innovation, and attracting more financial opportunities, that's for sure. And as a result, there are 3 main areas where we have a transformational result when it comes to the management of ESG information. The first one is the compliance with existing and coming regulation, something that has been, described by my colleagues before, the reputational side, and the concept of profitability. In a nutshell, again, the key point is about managing ESG information, but most of everything, I would say, managing granular information. There are plenty of open source available information when it comes to sustainability in the market, but the key objective, the key goal here is to gather granular information to properly assess companies and their current situation, current performance for sustainability. Again, this slide allows to stress this aspect because according to a publication by Forrester, May 2022, several corporate have been asked to answer a simple question: how important is today managing and using ESG information in your organization? And this is the result. 44% of the respondents just answer it is very important. 3 years ago, the amount, the percentage of this bucket was just 20%. While 3 years from now, same question, how do you expect ESG information will be important in your organization in 3 years from now? It will be 90%. So 90% of the respondents just said it will be very important. I think that this is a strong message from the market. How do we manage this process? In the Synesgy platform, we have a dedicated questionnaire, and the questionnaire is made by 5 macro sections. We first focus on the business with dedicated question where we try to discover or to understand what is the current company sustainability strategy, ESG risk management practices, and then we move forward with the 3 main pillars: environmental, social, and governance. And last but not least, we have a dedicated section as per the questionnaire where we focus with dedicated question on the industry the company belongs to. Of course, all the set of questions that are available in the system relies on existing sustainability frameworks or regulations. For example, in Europe, we have references to the European taxonomy. Then we have, of course, the SDG, Sustainable Development Goals, and the GRI, Global Report Initiative Standard. this slide allows to give a focus on the current industries that we are able to cover, 35 different sectors. So when a company registers in the system, automatically after having declared and disclosed the kind of industry it belongs to, we are able to provide in the question also the proper list of questions. What about the journey? So how it works, first of all, we engage with one of our clients, so the head of supply chain. We create an account in the system. We allow the head of supply chain to automatically manage the upload of the suppliers list or list of companies in the system. The system automatically manages the invitations, so it sends out the invitation to the suppliers. They have the chance to register in the system, fill in the questionnaire, receive a final score and a certificate. Both the score and the certificate are valid for 12 months. Why 12 months? Because after 12 months, we would like to see what are the potential progresses and what is the effort that the company has dedicated in order to improve its sustainability. And so that's why after 12 months, the system will automatically ask the company with an invitation to sign in the system and update the questionnaire. So the main goal here is also to see and to receive data that allow us to make time series analysis and to understand what are the changes over time of the portfolio of clients and suppliers. So two main roles in the journey. The first one is the head of supply chain, the company willing to assess a certain amount of companies that are part of the supply chain, and the head of supply chain can benefit of dedicated features in the platform like dashboard that are continuously updated in order to give the head of supply chain the chance to see updated distribution when it comes to both registration in the system and the scores, of course, the overall score and the score attached to each of the subsections that are part of the questionnaire. And on the other side, we have the suppliers, the invited company that, thanks to Synesgy, can self-assess and at the same time receive a score that is and a certificate that are that can be used in order to also engage with stakeholders. What about quality checks? Of course, all of the system, all of this aspects are strictly related to the fact that you wanted to check for the consistency of provided answers and information that we collect thanks to the platform. So first of all, we have a system of automatic quality checks in place. There are several types of quality checks, automatic quality checks in place. And in case of any inconsistency, there is an alert appearing to the second level of checks that we have, a team of analysts in charge of managing the questionnaire and to check for the alert coming from the automatic check first, and secondly, to check for the attached documentation, because as part of the standard process that we have in place, we also ask the suppliers to attach specific documentation like ISO certifications or energy bills or sustainability reporting when available, of course. So just some information regarding the head of supply chain before we mention the performance dashboard, and here we go. We have the distribution available in the system of the score. We attach, as I said before, an overall score to the company, but also a score for each of the subsections. This is automatically available in the system for the other supply chain, in addition to additional features in order to manage the list of suppliers by, for example, uploading and inviting additional ones or deleting some of them, and so on and so forth. And then we have for the suppliers a certificate, as I mentioned before. This is an example of the certificate that is downloadable automatically via the platform. And in addition to this, the certificate can be downloadable in different formats, like PNG, PDF, or in case of website, there is also the link in order to automatically insert it in the website if it is needed, or if the company is willing to display it in the corporate website. In addition to this, just a final remark from my side, the head of supply chain can manage all the set of information that are gathered thanks to the platform. And of course, we have different formats, and so that we can allow the head of supply chain to manage the information again. As of today, we have more than 300 head of supply chain in the system worldwide. And this allow us to have 170,000 suppliers involved as of today. For some of them, we have already received the questionnaire, the completed questionnaire. We have attached the score and the certificate. Some others are still in the progress of completing the Synesgy journey. I would like to thank you very much, to stop here, to thank you very much for your attention. Sakina, I give you back the floor. Thanks again.
Thank you so much, Francesco, for the presentation. In fact, we have just 1 minute before we conclude the webinar. So in case if any attendees have any questions, please feel free to drop it in the chat box. Or you can raise your hand as well. So either or. There is one question from the audience, I think, for Francesco. Is the questionnaire that you've mentioned, is it customizable for a particular customer, or is it generic in nature?
Yes, indeed. The questionnaire is customizable according, of course, in the context of localization of the questionnaire. We work with all the teams, all the partners in order to make it in line with existing sustainability frameworks, laws, regulations. So it is country-based customizable, but also at the same time it is buyer customizable. So in case another supply chain is willing to add specific questions that are, for example, in line with existing internal practices or strategies, of course we can do it. We can add modules in order to address this.
Thank you, Francesco, for your response. I think we're right on time. So in case if anyone has, any of the attendees has any questions later on, you could drop us an email and we'll get back to you as soon as possible from our side. I would like to thank all of you for joining in today's webinar, and also very thankful to all the guest speakers who have participated in the webinar today. Thank you and have a good day, everyone.
Thanks. Nice meeting all of you and have a good day.
Thank you. Have a good day.
Good day. Bye-bye.
Bye.